I was thinking about what to say, which is not normal for me because you can't stop me talking. But let's have a go. I thought I'll start from the beginning. My birth was political. I'm the firstborn child of my parents. And the legend goes that the celebrations on my arrival were rather muted. My father's two sisters made it clear they were disappointed my mother hadn't produced a son for their brother. A year and 10 months later, my sister arrived. My aunt said my mother had set up a girls' school in their brother's home. For reasons that I have never been able to decipher really, they did not resent my sister being a girl as much as they resented me not being a boy. Something to do with the status of firstborn in the part of the country I come from. Now, if my father was disappointed I was not a boy, he never let on. And he did nothing to show that I was anything but his beloved daughter. Very early in my life, he assured me that he did not think there was anything that a girl couldn't do once she put her mind to it. Now, I probably need to put this into some context and point out that I am 73 years old. So I'm talking about events that occurred a long time ago. And one could say that maybe it was a different country then. And whilst I'm about it, I might add that in the end, the boys did arrive. And my parents had the same number of boys as they had girls. Not in the order that my aunts would have preferred, but I think my aunts were eventually reconciled to my existence. My two aunts, by the way, were tough, fiercely independent, articulate, and dynamic women who had a reputation for not shirking away from any argument, ever. One of my earliest memories remains a scene of a gathering in the village when the younger one of my aunts, in full flow, reduced a grown man seated among the chiefs and elders to a stuttering silence. In other words, my aunts were the type of women that one would expect to flourish in politics. Apart from the initial lack of enthusiasm at my arrival, I don't recall that I was aware that there were any disadvantages in being a girl during the rest of my childhood. Not from my perspective then. Later on, I realized there were some rather odd things happening around me. I went to a mixed school, and the number of girls in the class was always rather small. And the first girl to drop out got pregnant when we were in class 5. I was 9 years old then. I have no idea how old she was. When I got to secondary school from 2, mathematics went from being one of my best subjects to one that I claimed I loved chemistry and I was good at it. The problem is that without mathematics, the path to many courses and professions is close to you. I was later to discover that this problem of mathematics teachers, often male, deciding that girls couldn't do mathematics was widespread. By the time I got to university, it dawned on me that many local problems, especially female problems, were in fact nationwide problems. I also made two other discoveries. One, it was worth speaking out. And if you are female, number two, and you speak out, you must be ready to be heckled. A few scars remain from that particular discovery. This was at a time when miniskirts seemed to preoccupy a lot of the discussion on campus. I wrote an article in the Volta Hall magazine. Volta Hall was a female hall. I think it is still a female hall. And suggested that women should be free to determine the length of their skirts and other mundane things. And suddenly, all hell broke loose around me. Seeing that I could hardly be counted among the fashionistas at the time, it did occur to me to wonder why I had picked on such a subject for a row with the boys. The next edition of one of the men's hall magazines was devoted entirely to me. The size of my boobs featured prominently. I kept up my head and refused to be intimidated. My recollection is that I won that argument. I had the feeling my aunts would have been pleased with their brother's daughter. By the time I arrived at the newsroom of the Daily Graphic as a reporter, aged 22, I thought I was ready to face anything and anybody. Now, if you've heard me tell this story before, I apologize. But I'm afraid I can't avoid it here. So, I'm being taken around and being introduced to the important people in the office. The first one told me, "Oh, you won't last. This is not a place for university graduates, and definitely not for girls, unless you want to be a typist." In the second office, I hold out my hand in greeting to one of the editors. He ignores my outstretched hand. He takes my wrist within his thumb and his forefinger, looks me straight in the face and tells me, "Your wrist is just about the size of my penis." I looked at the editor who was taking me around for support. He said nothing. I took a deep breath and I told myself, "So you want to be a journalist? Welcome." I refused to be sent to what was then called the women's page. I had this fear they wanted me to be restricted to recipes, babies, and fashion. So I waited until I had done everything on the newspaper: general reporting, the courts, sports, leader writing, sub-editing, obituaries, columnists, whatever. And then I went and edited the women's page. And I did it my way. I suspect we can safely say that I more than survived on that newspaper. Indeed, I made a success of my time at the place. I became the editor of the paper. And the rest, we can say, is history. It took me a while, but I did go into formal frontline politics. My view really is that I have been in politics all my life, and I will stay in politics all my life. I'm not sure what it is that drove me into wanting to run for parliament, since I was already in government anyway. But running for parliament made me realize things had not changed very much in our country since I was a child. The person against whom I was running, a sitting member of parliament, would say at every stop, "Don't vote for Elizabeth. She's not a proper woman. She hasn't got a husband, and horror of horrors, she hasn't got a child, and she's having an affair with the president." Well, I do have a husband, and I'm now the proud grandmother of Kumiwa and Danso. But what that had to do with elections, I'll never know. Did the women in the constituency feel that they owed any allegiance or solidarity or sisterhood to me because I was a woman? Oh no. In my part of the country, the solidarity was very much towards the political party you represent. Did my presence in government make any difference to the prospects for young girls and young women? I suspect the jury is still out on that. I heard on the radio this morning that 36% of 19-year-old females in Ghana are mothers. Now, that is a disaster, if you ask me. In some ways, it is still like my mate who dropped out at class 5 to have a baby. It is also on the news today that the top 3 places in the WASI exams were all girls, went to girls, Ghanaian girls. These 3 girls are not likely to be mothers at age 19. Now, that is something to celebrate. I feel like I have won an election. I wonder if there was joy when their sexes were announced at their beds, or if they had aunts who were disappointed they were not boys. Everything about girls is political. Thank you.